The corporation doesn't owe anyone anything. It's not a living, breathing thing. They usually have a singular purpose, growth. You go to work for an AT&T or a Chase or wherever, you know what the mission is. Then you have a responsibility, just like the corporation's responsibility is for growth. Your responsibility is your own growth. And does that place match what you want to feel good about yourself, ethically, morally?
Welcome to Leadership and Motivation Unleashed, practical leadership for modern workplaces. A podcast where we explore actionable strategies to help you lead with confidence, build cohesive teams, and create thriving workplace cultures.
We're here for the career-focused professionals climbing the corporate ladder, the managers navigating team dynamics, and the leaders shaping the future of work. In each episode, we'll break down challenges, share practical advice, and leave you with insights you can apply today.
I'm Patrick Law, your co-host, a Gulf War veteran with over 26 years of corporate leadership experience in banking and payments, blending precision and innovation with a tad of passion to solve big challenges.
And I'm Rachel Book, a C-suite trusted advisor and an HR leader with 2 decades of experience at Fortune 50 companies, specializing building people-first strategies and driving impactful talent solutions.
Together, Rachel and I, we combine operational expertise and transformational leadership to bring you real-world advice on leadership, workplace culture, team dynamics, career growth, and anything else that we may want to delve into.
So, if you're ready to take your career and leadership skills to the next level, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Today, we're going to talk about the idea of bringing your whole self to work. There is so much discussion and so much written about authenticity in the workplace, right? It's what contributes to an inclusive environment where people feel like they belong. It also is what contributes to building relationships with our peers as the lines blur between personal and work, right? We need to show up as who we are because we become friends with the people that we work with because we spend so much time there. And so when we think about authenticity and bringing our whole selves to work, Patrick, what does that mean to you? And how much of oneself should we encourage people to actually bring to work?
There's so much on this. I have been counseled over the years by bosses. For people listening, I'm on my 28th year in corporate America. I flew aircraft for 4 years. After my time in the military, I was going to college. Probably the coolest college job you could have is being an aviator for a family business in Rochester, New York. And then before that, 4 years in the Army. So I wanted to say that because being a soldier from 18 years old to 22, your frame of reference of the world is very different. And when I was in, I want to say less than 2% of the population wore the uniform. Now it's less than 1% for those keeping track at home. So the disconnect between people who serve and the society they protect is vast. I didn't go right into real work after the age of 22. I moved to Rochester, New York, started going to college during the day and learning how to fly, and then became a charter pilot and flight instructor. And it was amazing. Like my whole dream was to fly. I think we've talked about that on another episode. So 4 years of soldiering, 4 years of flying and going to school. Then I entered corporate America. So I was 26, I think, at the time when I started. So my behaviors were very different. I didn't have formal corporate education. I didn't have anybody to really help me through it. And in 1996, when I entered corporate America, veterans weren't really a thing. Like my first boss was a Vietnam veteran. Jim Stewart served in the Navy in Vietnam. And he understood a little bit, but it's not like he ever talked about it. No one even knew he and I were veterans, I don't think. No one even knew I had a degree. It was the type of place where they teach you how to work by trial and error. They throw you in the deep end of the pool and off you go. And I was promoted very quickly because it was the type of organization where if you worked hard and you didn't stop working and you were a grinder, they loved you. And that was the basis of a lot of promotions. Now, if anyone from that company from HR heard that, they'd be like, well, no, I didn't. Like it was, you survived on your own ingenuity and courageousness and confidence. That's what got you moved. No one taught me how to be a leader. Nobody taught me how to talk to anyone. I was still talking to people like they were soldiers. The number one feedback on me in the beginning was he doesn't smile. He doesn't look up when he walks down the hallway, and he doesn't ask us how our weekend was. He just asks for the TPS report. That's a movie reference for the people at home. And I wasn't a get down to business guy. I was a New Yorker who had the background I just told you, living in Texas. And geographically, those behaviors aren't a great fit. And that can be a whole other episode, but I was abrupt to people when in fact I was taking the initiative. I moved with a sense of urgency and I didn't know how to be anything but that. So the topic of bring your authentic self to work or be who you are, I was just being who I was. And I rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. I'm not proud of it. My first 10 years was rough. And I became a people leader in 18 months. So I went from single contributor, new guy, to having a small team. And then it just kind of took off from there. I was literally learning as I went. But what I figured out along the way is, even though I rubbed people the wrong way, we got a lot done. We got a lot done. I learned through some ugly situations with employees and coworkers and bosses, and HR wasn't like it is today. There wasn't a lot of collaboration then. They were mostly authoritarian, trying to steer me through scare tactics. As I was in the Army, I didn't really change my personality. A lot of people think, oh, the military, they turn you into a robot. Yeah, I followed all the rules for the most part. Right? But I kept my personality intact. I spoke my mind, and I was a nobody. And you met my boss, Rachel, like Mary Meyer, like she's hardcore. And she liked that about me. And that job needed a little personality. So I just carried that through all the phases of who I am. Even to this day, I probably overspeak my mind. Because I don't like leaders or coworkers or managers. I don't mean I don't like them. I mean, I don't like the behaviors of these people that ought to be something a textbook told them to be. If you aren't capable of being your real self, tell the truth, be transparent, be professional, be polite when you can, but just get to the point. Our time is so compacted at work. If you're not saying what you think and feel, again, as long as you keep it professional, how are you supposed to really solve problems together? So many times, whether it's here, and I deal with it every day, or at Fiserv, or US Bank Corp, or GenPass, or ACS, or flying, or whatever, people do this because they're uncomfortable with hard conversations. And that's a time waste. The time it takes to take the curvy way around to a topic versus just getting to it, you add those minutes up over a year, you can save hours, days, whatever. So I'd rather people be who they are and let the environment decide if who you are is a fit there. Don't try to be something you're not.
That's really interesting. You know, as I'm listening to you talk, Patrick, two things are going through my mind. So very often, if I were to categorize the reasons why people sort of are mismatched with their environment, sometimes it's because they have no idea, right? So you and I both, when we started our careers, didn't really know the rules of the road. For me, it was because I'm the first in my family to have a corporate career, to have a college degree. And so I didn't have any guidance on the rules and etiquette and expectations. And I for sure made a few faux pas, for sure. I've heard some of them from people that I worked with back then. It made me laugh, but definitely because I had no clue. The other reason is sometimes really depends on how much power you have, right? So when you think about it, if you're a leader and you're going to come in and you're going to be like, okay, I'm just going to cut to the chase, or I'm going to skip the weekend chit chat, or I'm just going to be who I am and not put on all the filters or the veneers of politeness that sometimes you expect to see in corporate America, which sometimes aren't even real or authentic. Sometimes people can get away with that because they have power, right? But what about people that don't have power? What about people that are establishing themselves, people that might be new to a very established team where everyone's got all the inside jokes, and then they have to figure out how much of themselves do they want to share? How much of the investment in the relationships is necessary in order to build up your social capital so that you can get things done? And, you know, that's another aspect of the conversation, because sometimes you can have someone who's like, hey, I want to compartmentalize. I've got my work life. I've got my home life. Maybe in my home, I'm a very different personality than I am at work. You know, we saw that a lot actually during the pandemic, right? Where our family members all of a sudden we're overhearing our work conversations. They heard us in our work mode, right? And most of us shift, right? Have you ever heard the expression code switching? Yeah. So code switching is when sometimes it's unconscious and sometimes it's intentional, when you actually use different mannerisms, different speech patterns, different word choices, depending on which environment you're in. And it might mean that you'll speak differently when you're with your family and with your friends than you will at work. And even at work, you may speak differently when you're presenting to executives than when you're talking to your team. Now, again, some people are really intentional and they're like, hey, I'm code switching because I'm getting into work mode and I really don't want to tell people about my life and who I am. And maybe it's because they feel different or uncomfortable. Maybe they're the only one without a degree. Maybe they have a medical condition that might be invisible that they're hiding. Maybe they are a different socioeconomic status than everyone else. Maybe they're making changes to themselves to fit in, right? They feel like they have to dress differently, or they feel like they have to color their hair or make changes to their appearance to look younger, right? A lot of people do that because they feel that they have to. And then some just don't want to. And so what I think a lot about is, how does someone decide what the right balance is? How does someone say, how do I figure out how to draw the lines between who I am as a person and who I am in the workplace? Is it the same? Is it different? Or is it somewhere in the middle?
Trial and error.
Yeah.
That was my confidence and courage comment. Like, you got to try. You can't just stay in the corner or in the shadows. You have to make the choice to be seen and to be heard. We talked about it on the Work From Home podcast.
Yeah.
Only you can drive the perception of you. We used to do this thing called vibe management at the bank. I don't even know where I got it.
Yeah.
Everything is through somebody else. Like I'm not trying.
Tell me more about vibe management.
Yeah, I'm not trying to play like the creator of things somewhere or heard of it and then I instituted it. So vibe management was, and it was hard. HR was not a fan, by the way, Rachel, at the bank. Like, you can't ask people those questions, but I'd put people in a room and we'd do blind responses on what it felt like to be around each other.
Ooh.
Blind. Maybe people could figure it out or they could guess, but that would be a waste of their energy. I just wanted the dialogue to be around who comes in the room with you. Because there's 2 or 3 of us in every interaction. There's the real you on the inside, and then there's the professional side of you, and then what's your agenda in the meeting or in the moment. And I really wanted people to talk about that and understand it. Not a lot of organizations do. They just throw you in the deep end of the pool and then watch you splash around to try to get to the side, right? Like, I wanted people to know who they were, who each other were. Don't hide it. Put it out there. And then how do we all adapt to the vibe you're giving off? I use the word vibe because I love B words. Maybe there's another word for it, but we use vibe review. And we did it for hundreds of people. And it was pretty effective. Now, did we become a perfect organization and kill the work? No, but man, the perception in the market, that business inside US Bank that we were running at the time, Alon Financial Services, was known as a people business. And I did coin this, the term of, our people are our killer app. Yeah. Most businesses are just selling what, not everyone's going to be SpaceX or Apple. And even Apple now, this is just expected. But when it first came out, what was it? It was a killer app. SpaceX with the self-landing fuel pods. Oh my gosh. Like, who would have thought that was ever possible? Those are rare, but people are forever. And if you allow people the empowerment and the approval, or whatever word you want to give them, to give their unedited, authentic ideas. And when I say unedited, I don't mean like crazy, unprofessional dialogue. I mean, there's nothing wrong with speaking your mind. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. We're not in 8th grade anymore. Like, oh, I don't want to ask that question because I'll sound dumb. There's no such thing, particularly in our kind of industry and probably many others. Like, I know people in aerospace. I know people in defense. I know people everywhere. And they all sound alike. It's just a bunch of people trying to figure out how to be successful, however they determine whatever success is. But I feel, unless you're really bringing your natural gifts and talents to bear, then you won't be successful and you'll be miserable. And you need to really look at the organization you're inside of. If it isn't a fit for you, you're not trapped. This is going to be a little edgy, but I got to say it. So, Rachel, you ever go out to layoff.com as an HR professional? Be honest.
I have seen some of the content on there.
Okay. If you go out there and read that stuff, I don't often, but like, people take screenshots and send it to me. So, can you believe this person said this, whoever this person is? I'm going to use language for a minute. I think those sites are chicken shit. And the people on them are sad. You're not owned by the organization you belong to. If your authentic self isn't a match from where you are, your time would be better spent not typing into an anonymous website that you hate where you work. Go find another job. It should be a lifelong pursuit to find yourself and find where you fit. And if those two things don't match, that's a sad existence.
It really is. And I think it's so important for people to read the room when they join a company, right? Because when you think about how you form relationships with new people, whether it's a colleague or a boss or a romantic partner or a friend, you don't go super deep right away, right? When people get to know each other, it's a gradual process. And so I think it's really important for everyone to read the room and get a sense about how people communicate. Focus on building a personal relationship, establishing credibility, right? And then you'll know when it's time to be your completely unfiltered self, because they will know you and they will trust you and they will assume positive intent. So Pam Everhart, who is a fabulous leader at Fidelity Investments, who I worked with several years ago, she's famous for saying R before T. So R comes before T in the alphabet. And so you should always think about relationship before task. So if you show up somewhere and you ask someone to do something for you, if you don't have a relationship, if they don't know who you are, they don't know why you're there, they might be hesitant, right? They might stand in the way, sometimes unintentionally, of helping you achieve success. And so I think figuring out how much of yourself you want to bring to work so that people know about your weekend, they know about your family, they know about your life, and that they see that you care about theirs.
Yeah.
What happens then is you feel much more comfortable being you, and you don't feel like you have to put on this veneer of whatever seems to be the right way to talk and act and speak and dress. And I think most people, and Kenji Yoshino, who is a professor at NYU Law School. Patrick, have I ever told you about this book?
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the best ones. So Kenji is famous for this research on which he calls covering. He talks about how most people in corporate America, his statistics are astounding. And actually, Deloitte does regular research on it as a follow-up. And I will include the links in the show notes so you can all take a look. But he talks about how most of us come to work and we're covering some aspect of our identity. It may be our appearance. It might be some deeper aspect like our religion, our sexual identity. It might be our, I mentioned before, our socioeconomic status, physical or cognitive abilities, right? Our age, right? And so we all come in and try and cover who we are. And what that does is it sucks up our cognitive capacity to actually do our jobs well, right? And so back to what you were saying about finding an environment where people won't judge me for who I am is a beautiful thing, because then you don't have to spend your time pretending and faking, right? And you can actually focus on your job. So, that is a big deal. Building the relationships, finding an environment where you can be yourself. But then I'm going to say something controversial. It may not be so controversial for an HR person, but there's some aspects of people's authentic identity that don't belong in the workplace. And it's just the truth, right? There are some people that are they might dislike other people. They might have opinions or worldviews that are in conflict with the way other people live their lives, right? Or opinions that they have. They might disagree with a business decision, right? And sometimes you just have to show up and do your job, right? And so we should never police people's thoughts. We should never police people's life choices. But as employers and as builders of cultures, we can say what is appropriate or what is not appropriate when it comes to expressions of behavior in the workplace. And it boils down to respect for each other always, right? So I've unfortunately had to have conversations with people over the years that tell them like, hey, okay, that's what you think. That's who you are. That's what you believe. But this part of yourself is best left at home and focus on other aspects in the workplace. And I think that is really, really critical. For takeaways, read the room, focus time on building relationships, choose a company that aligns with your values where you can feel like you can be yourself, because then you will be more successful and more productive. And, spend time thinking about who you are and which aspects of yourself you would like to bring into the workplace so that people can get to know you, they can get to appreciate you and understand the work that you contribute within the broader context of who you are.
Yeah, my closing comments. I have two categories. One's corporate responsibility, and it's probably not what people may think until you hear what I'm about to say. And then male versus female, which is edgy, but I'm gonna go there for a second. On corporate responsibility, when I say it, it means the corporation doesn't owe anyone anything. It's not a living, breathing thing. They usually have a singular purpose: growth. And is it share price? If you're publicly traded, if you're privately held or a family office, is it returns? Whatever, like venture capital money, everyone's looking for a return, an outcome. That is a corporation's primary mission. There's a choice if you choose to follow that path. I did. You did. We both worked in our individual organizations to make them less just focused on that. Now, we didn't change the environments in terms of what their primary mission was, and I never would want to. It's not what anyone's mission should be. You go to work for an AT&T or a Chase or wherever, you know what the mission is. Then you have a responsibility, just like the corporation's responsibility is for growth. Your responsibility is your own growth. And does that place match what you want to feel good about yourself, ethically, morally, your moral compass? Rachel and I talked about our moral compasses a lot. It is a choice. You are not prisoner at where you work, and the choice is yours. Be great there or go. I can't tell you how many HR partners I've had in my career or direct reports that say, Patrick, you can't say those things, where I've said things like get happy or get out. And people are like, you can't talk like that. There's a version of my authentic self. And I don't mean it to be rude. I mean,
yes,
you have a choice and you should be empowered or feel empowered to make that choice. But whatever environment you're in, your primary mission, I'm pointing to all the listeners, if you're watching us, is to leave the place better than you found it. You have more control than you think, even in Fortune 50s, 500s, 1000s, privately held, whatever. You have more control. Not crazy control, just you can choose the things around you and the behaviors that you exhibit to improve the place. That's how I've always tried to lead. The male-female piece, my wife and I have talked about this before. I don't shy away from these types of discussions. U.S. Bank started its Women's in Leadership program. I was their second speaker next to our CEO. I believe that women in power make everything better. I believe women are more mature. I think you make more rational decisions, all the things, right? And I try to propagate that forward. But one of the topics that comes out all the time when I've talked to female leaders or I was mentored by female leaders, you guys have listened to a few of them. Rachel met a few of my old bosses from the military who were female superior commanders in their space. Patrick, when you do what you do and you're aggressive, people think you're cool. When we do it, people think we're a bitch. Or being emotional, or all the words that women get saddled with, which I think is sad and pathetic. Being a guy, I can never understand what it's like to be Rachel in corporate America. I just will never understand it for all the obvious reasons. It's like she'd never understand from my side. But we can have empathy for each other and try to help each other through those things. Like maybe I'm too gruff, and Rachel has counseled me on occasion. And I've had other HR partners counsel me on occasion. We all need to pull each other to an operating center that works for us. I'll close with this. If you're a female listening to this and you're in corporate America and you don't think you have a voice, you're wrong. Use your voice. And I don't necessarily think it matters if people think you're a bitch or if you're being emotional or whatever. If you have an authentic voice and you have something to say and it makes sense, you should have the courage to say it and be proud that you're saying it and not take crap off of anybody. I've taught my daughter that. She joined the military. That's hard. There's not a lot of females in the military. For those of you who listened to the Teresa Meyer episode, what they dealt with in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, even though the military's progressed mightily, she's only been out for 3 years now, she did deal with similar things. You can find ways to build relationships, like what Rachel was saying, that gives you allies, or you can find allies to propagate your mission forward. So I think those are two things I wanted to close with that I think are actionable about bringing your authentic self, because women are such an important and large part of the workforce in any aspect, corporate America, police, Leos, whatever. So be who you are and be proud.
Thanks so much.
Be great, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to Leadership and Motivation Unleashed. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a rating and review. It only takes 1 minute and it helps the show grow and reach more leaders like you in search of advice and motivation.
And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Please remember to share with your friends and family and coworkers, mentors, trusted advisors. This show is for everybody. See you next time.